Welcome, everybody. John Arvosis here, Washington, D.C., here to talk about Ukraine. Lots of news today as I check on my TikTok brethren here. I'm always surprised. Anyway, whatever. I just feel like we're in the 6th month of this war. I'm surprised when there's news, but there's news. So lots of news, actually. Probably too much news. I mean, literally, I've got 7 pages of news. I'm a little afraid I've got too much news here. And that's cutting back, of course, but we'll see. If I start taking too long, I'll cut back, but I thought it was all interesting. Anyway, hello, everybody. Everybody doing good? Doing good? Even though I know that's grammatically incorrect, sometimes it's annoying to say, everybody doing well? I am good. Almighty TikTokers, how are you? Cue the Russians, I know. Cue the Russians. Oh, you got a notification too. Yeah, well, the TikTok gods are liking me lately. We shall see. I put in a request to get the Q&A turned back on. Let's see if that works. I'm still not convinced whether the Q&A on TikTok got turned off accidentally or not, but we'll see. Oh, Ella Fila. I thought that's cute. Somebody wrote, "Hey friend, how are you?" in Greek, and I read it as CIA Fila. You have to speak Greek to appreciate the joke because I don't have my glasses on. So instead of Ella Fila, I read CIA Fila. I'm like, huh? Greek inside jokes. What do you do? Anyway, hello everybody, and you all got notifications on TikTok, and you guys are back here. And actually, I'm already abusing my voice. I'm going to try to use my voice in a normal tone because, again, this is why we buy the big honking microphone, is so I don't have to hurt my voice screaming. So, all right. Anyway, guys, glad to see all the TikTokers here, YouTubers, etc. arriving. I am John Arvosis. While I'm going to actually start right now, but while I'm starting, we sort of forgot one of our traditions. Folks, if you'd introduce yourselves where you're from, I think it's kind of nice on TikTok and on YouTube, etc. If you feel like it, if you don't. But I think it's kind of fun for everybody just to see where everybody hails from. Afterwards, we're going to go about an hour, maybe a little longer. Afterwards, I'm going to go hang out at the Discord again. This time will just be kind of the after show. Nothing too serious. We can talk serious stuff if you want, but more just the after show hangout period. I will do it at my Discord. That's discord.aravosis.com. We've got about 400 people now, which is fabulous. So check it out. And what else? We've got the fundraiser still going on at my store. We're trying to raise $1,000 to buy cookies for Ukrainian kids, for Ukrainian refugees, kids that can't get food. Well, kids that get food, but the food charity group wanted to, in addition to getting them vegetables and all the stuff they should get, actually getting cookies for kids. In other words, sweet biscuits, as you Brits would say, to buy something nice for the Ukrainian kids. So we've got that set up. I'm going to pull the plug tomorrow on this. We've raised about $700. I'd like to get us to $1,000, which is what they asked for. And one of you who gives $5 or more, we're going to just kind of pull a rabbit out of a hat, or maybe that's not quite the expression I'm looking for, but pull one of your names out, and that person will get a Vyshyvanka, the male Ukrainian embroidered shirt, the red one. I've got many, but the red one that I've got here, I am going to send it international as well, if that is the case. So you can be from abroad rather than US, and we will still send it to you. So if you guys can give, that'd be great. On my TikTok, you can go to my profile page with the beacons link. Go there and click, and it'll give you Vlad's PayPal. For you all here, I will just show you Vlad's PayPal, and we'll go from there. But we're sending the money directly to Vlad, who's my friend in Ukraine, who we've done all this fundraising with. He's obviously legit. We've been doing this for 6 months now. We've raised $57,000 to help the Ukrainians. Let's get another 1,000, guys. So let me move on. So finally, we've got new t-shirts in. I can show you those at the end in the t-shirt shop. That's aravosis.com. Let's start, guys. So huge ammunition depot fire today. The Ukrainians blew up yet another ammunition, actually several ammunition depots. The big one that is being talked about today that you might have heard in the news, and you will hear about it in the news, it was so significant the New York Times did an entire article today about this ammunition depot getting blown up by the Ukrainians. It is about 30 kilometers or 20 miles south of the... It's funny. The New York Times called it the Ukrainian border, and I was kind of like, it's not the Ukrainian border. Crimea, just to remind everybody, Crimea is this Ukrainian peninsula right here that the Russians stole in 2014. They invaded. They took the peninsula, annexed it as part of Russia. So they claim it's Russia, but it's not Russia. It's Crimea. It's Ukraine. Now, there were two explosions today. Actually, the big ammunition dump that you're going to see a lot of videos of was right around here in northern Crimea, kind of where my finger is right at the top. As I said, about 20 miles south of not the Ukrainian border, but the border with the rest of Ukraine. Let's be a little more precise, okay? 30 kilometers south. The explosion was at what supposedly was a temporary ammunition depot that a storage site that the Russians had just set up, and the Ukrainians blew the hell out of it. Let me pull up one of the videos. I think I got the video here. There were many videos passing around because it was really quite well done by the Ukrainians. While I'm pulling this up, I'll tell you more. The Ukrainians are saying that it was Ukrainian special forces that did it. In other words, it sounds like it may not have been a long-range weapon. It could have been special forces planting bombs, which is very interesting. That these guys got, pretty significantly behind the lines, and actually even more so. I'll show you this one. You can just get a quick little good look. I'll get you guys nice little explosions in the distance. And I'll show you one more. Where's the really good? This is the really good one. That's a really good one. Actually, for you guys too. Here we go. So you can see, it was a hell of a fire. And apparently the explosion then sort of branched out and it blew up a nearby railway line too, which is great. Now, other explosion happened at a military base, air base in not southern, but further south from there. I'll show you on the map. Several explosions were heard at a military air base in the village of Gvardiske. Oh boy, it looks like it's Swedish or something. Gvardiske, not far from Simferopol. Simferopol is all the way down here. So the earlier one is up here. This one is down here. Now this one is really pretty far south. Although, interestingly enough, the air base that the Ukrainians attacked last week in Crimea was over here. So not that, a little bit to the west, not terribly far to the west though. It's hard to tell from here. I'm guessing 20 miles, 30 kilometers maybe to the west here. Exactly what Andrew is saying on TikTok, more cigarettes. The Russians tried to claim the Ukrainians bombing the air base last week that blew up a lot of planes and everything else. The Russians initially tried to claim it was a careless Russian with a cigarette. You know. Smoking kills. Exactly, Mario. Yeah, there you go. So do smoking munitions. Anyway, that was very cool. The second one, according to the media, the Russian military is currently checking the version of an attack by a small unmanned aerial vehicle. So the Russians think that it was a drone of some kind. This gets interesting. Actually, there was a really interesting article in the New York Times talking about why Crimea is so important to Russia. There's a lot of reasons militarily, to control the seas, all sorts of things. But this was getting into why it matters so much to Putin on a symbolic basis. Let's put it that way. Now, a senior Russian official had vowed last month that if Ukraine attacked Crimea, it would immediately face, quote, its judgment day. You know the Russians with their little hyperbole. At the same time, they had threatened NATO. The Russians had threatened NATO that we'd better not help the Ukrainians try to take back Crimea. Or again, and I don't know if I've got it. Yes. Putin threatened that a Western-backed effort to retake the peninsula by force could trigger a direct war between Russia and NATO. Again, the dude cannot beat the Ukrainians. He can't beat the Ukrainians, okay? And Putin keeps throwing out these threats saying, we're going to declare war on NATO. I get why NATO doesn't want to do it because, look, if you think the guy's a little, I don't think he's off his rocker, but they think he's off his rocker and they're afraid of pushing him too far by even just poking at him. I think it's time to poke at him. I think when Putin makes these kind of comments, he's trying to freak people out in the West, and somebody in the West at a senior level has to turn around and go, you know what? Shut up. Just shut up. Seriously, you can't even beat Ukraine, and you think you're going to take on all 30 plus 2 with Sweden and Finland, all 32 NATO countries? Seriously? I mean, and not to knock Ukraine, but you can't beat Ukraine, and you're going to beat the United States? Seriously? It's total drama queen. It's insane. I mean, Anyway, so why Crimea? Let me read you these 2 paragraphs from the New York Times. I thought they were very interesting in terms of the more symbolic, from the heart reason why this matters to Russia. The Black Sea Peninsula that Russia illegally seized in 2014 is more than a crucial military base and staging ground for its invasion of Ukraine. It holds special meaning for President Putin, who has told his people that Crimea is a sacred place and Russia's holy land. And by repeatedly striking at the territory, which Russia has held for the better part of a decade, Ukraine has posed a fresh challenge to Mr. Putin's standing at home. So the first part of this is all of these explosions that Ukraine is now doing. Last week, they blew up the airbase and really did a good job. I mean, they blew up at least 8 planes, according to NATO's assessment. The Ukrainians said they think they blew up around 12. Clearly, the video from the airbase, the satellite images show the Ukrainians caused a lot of damage. Now you've got them blowing up a big ammunition storage in northern Crimea. You've also got them at the same time blowing up the train tracks that the Russians use, to transport stuff, at least one of the main train tracks, from Russia through Crimea north to the other occupied territories in Ukraine. And now you've got another airbase in southern Ukraine, in southern Crimea, that also got attacked today, right? They're doing it because it matters. It matters strategically, okay? So, I mean, it matters because these are reinforcements the Russians would be using, right? So that makes sense. But also what's interesting is they're trying to embarrass Putin at home because they know that it's the Holy Land, and they're trying to embarrass the hell out of him. Basically calling into question Putin's manhood, in essence, his military manhood, his leadership manhood, right? New York Times, no single action that Mr. Putin has taken in his 22-year rule provoked as much pro-Kremlin euphoria among Russians as his largely bloodless annexation of Crimea, which cemented his image at home as a leader, resurrecting Russia as a great power. Okay. And in the run-up to the invasion last winter, it was Crimea that Mr. Putin repeatedly cited as the locus of an existential security threat posed by Ukraine, warning that, and this is where he warned that a Western-backed effort would trigger possibly war with the West. So Putin Putin has vested a lot in Crimea, and the Ukrainians want to get it back, but this is the reason the Ukrainians are hitting it so hard. All right. Enough of that. According to the British Defense Intelligence, the Russians are having a very hard time exerting control over the Black Sea. The Black Sea being this sea down here. Obviously, it's a little hard to tell because you can't see this is the surrounding countries: Romania, Hungary, Slovakia, blah, blah, blah. So all of these are surrounding countries. Poland up here, down here. You've got the Black Sea, which actually is sea down here. Then you've got Russia over here. You've got Turkey down here. Then you get the Straits of Bosporus, or whatever they're called, but which are the straits that you've got to go through that Turkey governs in order to get into the Mediterranean, right? So you kind of got Greece down here-ish. You've got the straits here, Turkey. In any case, the Black Sea. Russia has had a very hard time controlling the Black Sea, and the Institute for the Study of War. Where did I put my glasses? I'm becoming my parents. Here we go. Because this text is too small. Talked about it. The surface vessels of Russia's Black Sea Fleet continue to pursue an extremely defensive posture, with patrols generally limited to waters within sight of the Crimean. Got to turn off the first troll of the day. Go away. With limited to waters within sight of the Crimean coast. This contrasts with heightened Russian naval activity in other seas, as is typical for this time of year. What that means is after the Moskva got sunk, which was the Russian flagship down here, remember? And I'm trying to remember if it got, maybe it's, I'm vaguely remembering it getting sunk around here. The Russians freaked out, pulled back their boats in general, and pulled them closer to the shore to defend them, okay? So the Russians have totally freaked out, and now any kind of ships the Russians have in the Black Sea they're operating them in a defensive stance. In other words, they're not kind of getting out their tough guy, challenging the Ukrainians. They're taking care of their boats to make sure they don't get blown up because the Ukrainians so freaked them out. The Black Sea continues to use, the Black Sea Fleet, the Russian Black Sea Fleet, continues to use long-range cruise missiles to support ground offensive, but is currently struggling to exercise effective sea control. It has lost its flagship Moskva, a significant portion of its naval aviation combat jets, and control of Snake Island. The Black Sea Fleet's currently limited effectiveness undermines Russia's overall invasion strategy, in part because the amphibious threat to Odessa has now been largely neutralized. This means Ukraine can divert resources to press Russian ground forces elsewhere. What they're getting at there is, down here you've got Odessa, okay? Free Ukraine, not occupied by the Russians. Once you get over here, Kherson, this area, you start to get occupied by the Russians. So you got occupied down here, occupied up here, occupied all around here, south of Zaporizhia, over to Donetsk, all the way here, and then north of Kharkiv. So all of this is occupied by Russia. This sliver is not. So this is what Ukraine still has to access, the Black Sea and Odessa right here. For a while, there was, oh, I see that crypto. Sorry about that for the cap. Appreciate that. Sorry, I was looking away at my map when you sent it. Thanks for pointing that out, whoever pointed that out. I appreciate that. So what they're saying is, initially, the Ukrainians were very worried that the Russians were going to come in and try to launch an amphibious assault on Odessa using their sources, their military coming here from Crimea. Now that the Ukrainians have taken back Snake Island, I'm going to lose for Snake Island, more or less over here, taken down the Moskva, pushed Russian ships back, it is now considered very unlikely and very unfeasible for the Russians to make an amphibious assault at Odessa. So what does that mean? The Russians no longer have to keep, the Ukrainians no longer have to keep as many troops here near Odessa, because there's really no chance of the Russians launching it. I mean, they could launch a cruise missile attack, sure, right? They could launch a missile attack, but you don't need troops to protect against the missile attack. You need anti-missile systems, surface-to-air missiles, etc. So the Ukrainians have now been able to move troops that they had in Odessa, preparing for the attack, to other parts of Ukraine where they can be better used. So now Ukraine is able to beef itself up for the counteroffensive, which will be happening in Kherson, other places. So again, all of that is a fallout from the Russians not being able to get control of the Black Sea, because they couldn't invade Odessa, and because they couldn't invade Odessa, the Ukrainians, thank you, Ellie, for that, the Ukrainians were able to then move their troops from Odessa elsewhere and beef up their forces. So everything has consequences. It's the butterfly wings flapping kind of thing. Everything has consequences that lead to something else. Now, Institute for the Study of War, which is that defense think tank that I really like here in Washington, D.C., sip of tea, one moment. ISW was reporting some really interesting news about how the local collaborator militia, I don't even know what to call them exactly. I don't want to call them the wrong thing, but you've got these two territories in eastern Ukraine that the Russians are hell-bent on annexing, okay? One is Luhansk, and Luhansk is the one that the Russians now control, 98% or something, all but a couple of villages. Donetsk is the other one here. Donetsk, they controlled 50%. Maybe they've now got, I don't even know, 60%, but not much more, okay? Combined, these two regions are called Donbas, the Donbas. And you'll see that referenced a lot in the news. When you see Donbas, you'll know it means the east of Ukraine in essence. Well, here's what's going on. These two regions, with the Russians' help, with the Russians' tutelage, really, they've, recently declared independence from Ukraine, and they've been fighting a war against the Ukrainian government since like 2014. It has not been a civil war. It has been a Russian proxy war. The Russians have been giving them arms. The Russians have been even moving people in there to help them. It's been Russia trying to break this region away from Ukraine is what's been going on. So as part of that, what did the Russians do? They set up two local governments, like the Donetsk People's Republic, and I'm guessing it's the Luhansk People's Republic, right? This kind of, even using the Soviet name, which is kind of creepy, right? People's Republic. These guys also, at least the occupied portions, set up their own military, their own army. So you had like the Luhansk, People's Republic military, whatever it is. Well, what's happening now is the fighters in Luhansk apparently no longer want to fight for the territory in Donetsk because the Russians pretty much effectively got most of Luhansk now. They've got, like I said, 98%. So the Russians have moved on, and there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of fighting going on. Kramatorsk, this whole area. It's a lot of little villages and cities near here. The Russians are trying to move the Luhansk militia, the Luhansk military. So these are Ukrainians, but they're Ukrainian collaborators in essence, right? Ukrainian traitors who formed their own military to support Russia. They're refusing to move into Donetsk to help the Russians fight there. So this is what ISW, Institute for the Study of War, was getting into. So let me read this. Elements of the Luhansk People's Republic militia reportedly refused to continue fighting in Donetsk Oblast, in other words, the further west oblast, and complained about the grueling pace of offenses outside of Luhansk Oblast. The emotional significance of recent Russian targets in the Donetsk Oblast resonates with audiences in the Donetsk People's Republic, but not with the LNR. So what they're saying is basically they've been having a lot of battles going on in Donetsk here, and a lot of them have had emotional significance for people in this area who want to break free of Ukraine. But guess what? People here in Luhansk couldn't care less. So even though it might be inspiring here to fight, or at least the collaborators to fight, the collaborators in Luhansk are going, screw that. We wanted our own independence or our own whatever. We don't want to help the other guys. So anyway, that's what's going on. What was this? Oh yeah, several Ukrainian channels shared a video on August 15th, which would be yesterday, of soldiers from the Luhansk battalions, that's the furthest east one, 2740, refusing to fight for the Donetsk People's Republic. The soldiers claim that they celebrated victory. Listen to this. The soldiers claim that they celebrated victory on July 3rd when the Luhansk forces reached the borders of the Luhansk Oblast and that their work is done. Why does this matter? This matters because the Russians don't have enough troops. And the Russians have been remember, they've been recruiting now from prisons to get more troops. And they're telling prisoners that if you fight for 6 months with the Russian military, you will be exonerated. You'll be pardoned, right? You won't have to serve your sentence after the war. The Russians are they're taking volunteers now around the country, and they're these volunteer battalions that are just garbage. They're getting almost no training. All the military folks in the West are saying it's a disaster for Russia. So now you've got even the forces they've already got helping them, like the collaborators in Luhansk, are saying, our battle was over July 3rd when we declared ourselves independent. Sayonara to the rest of you. That's fabulous. That is absolutely fabulous. See what else we got here. Oh, and at least one Russian military blogger has criticized the Luhansk Republic service members for desiring Russian support for their own liberation and then refusing to fight in the Donetsk Oblast. So what you've got now is a little bit of a catfight of everybody going after each other, and that's great because it ain't great for morale, and it doesn't really, frankly, help them get even more people to fight, certainly not in Luhansk. It means they're going to have a harder time now getting other Ukrainians in that region to help fight. So that's great news. Additional Ukrainian attacks. There were a number of Ukrainian attacks in other areas in the last couple of days. Ukraine's Southern Operational Command reported that Ukrainian forces struck Russian ammunition depots in Blahodavivka near the bridgehead at Lozovo and Novopetrivka in northern Kherson. So northern Kherson, this is the Kherson Oblast, the Kherson region. North would be I didn't look up. It's funny. I usually look up the towns. I didn't look up these towns. But north means you're going to probably get somewhere around here is where they're hitting them. This is the area where we think the big counteroffensive will probably hit hardest first, most likely. The railway blown up. Oh, yeah, this is interesting. There was a railway blown up in Russia's Kursk Oblast. Oblast is the Ukrainian and Russian word. You know, is it state? Is it county? I call it a region because it's kind of the easier way to refer to it. Because in Ukraine, for example, there's only so many of them. I don't know if there's, I don't know if Ukraine has 20 of them. I'm not sure offhand, but it's not that many that like it could be like a state. You know, I call it a region, make it easy. In any case, a railway was blown up in Russia's Kursk Oblast, just east of Sumy. So to show you, the Kursk Oblast is more or less here. This is a rough estimation, but you've got Ukraine here. This is all Russia, okay? Sumy's here. So it's the region in Russia that is right here on the Ukrainian border. A railway blew up there. Very interesting, right? Province. You can call it a province too. Very interesting. It blew up today, actually. Blew up part of a railway only used for freight trains, Russian media reported. According to investigators, this is great. According to investigators, I like that, someone planted an explosive device with about 200 grams of TNT under the railway and detonated it. So that wasn't an accident. That's great. Ukrainian sources reported that Ukrainian partisans blew up a rail bridge on the southwestern outskirts of Melitopol on August 13th. That would be 3 days ago. That Russian forces frequently use to transport military equipment between the south and the east. So Melitopol is here, and again, occupied by Russia, right? Because remember, Russia occupies this entire swath down here. So Melitopol is going to be right in the middle. Melitopol also very interesting because that's pretty much, I think it's part of the Zaporizhia Oblast, but bottom line is it's kind of right between, the fighting here and the fighting here, Zaporizhia and Kherson, which are the two big regions really that the Russians are getting worried that the Ukrainians are going to have their counteroffensive in. I think it's more Kherson, but it seems Zaporizhia as well. Melitopol's right in the middle. So blowing up a railway bridge there is fabulous because again, it's the Ukrainians. All of this, think of it this way too. All of this is the Ukrainians trying to prepare for the counteroffensive. So they keep blowing up train lines. They keep blowing up ammunition, right? They blew up the airplanes last week. They're trying to sort of damage the Russian troops through attrition in a sense, where they're sitting there and cutting off their supplies, cutting off their weapons so that they can weaken them, and then the Ukrainians can attack once the Russians are weaker. 2 explosions in the Russian, this is Melitopol as well. This is different. 2 explosions in the Russian-occupied city of Melitopol, same town, knocked out pro-Kremlin television broadcasts on Tuesday. The broadcast had taken the place of local Ukrainian media sources as Russia seeks to spread propaganda and control the news narrative. All right, a little more tea. The Ukrainian Air Force warns that Ukraine needs to be prepared for possible attacks on Independence Day. It's Independence Day. The spokesman for the Ukraine's Air Force Command says intelligence data shows that that Russia is building up military capacity in Belarus. We talked about this yesterday. Belarus is Russia's ally that's up here. And remember I said that, local activists were reporting that a large number of Russian missiles had been moved into this area, preparing for pretty big attack on Ukraine with Russian missiles. Now you've got the same thing being discussed in essence by Ukraine's military. I keep interchanging the two. It's not a good thing. Here we go. That intelligence data shows that Russia is building up military capacity in the Belarusian territory. Russia has been using Belarus's territory to launch missiles at Ukraine since the beginning of the war. Independence Day, Ukraine's big national holiday, is August 24th. And he said the enemy always uses such dates to give congratulations. We must be ready for this. So Russia likes to use these kind of dates just to rub it in Ukraine's face by blowing things up and things like that. This was really interesting. Russia's defense minister Shoigu said that Russia has, quote, no need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Russia's nuclear arsenal exists mainly to deter a nuclear attack, and its use, quote, is limited to emergency circumstances. Now, I mean, it's interesting. I will say a couple things. One, they lie, and we know they lie. But what's interesting is that rather than say that who knows, we might use them, you better keep, right, NATO, you better not get involved. You better not give those longer range missiles for the HIMARS because you better not give fighter jets, tanks, this kind of thing, right? Rather than say that, you've got the Russian defense minister putting out a calming statement that is saying, look, we're not going to use nukes. Don't worry about it. That's interesting. I mean, and again, they lie, but it's still interesting because typically they like to keep us on edge. So the fact that it's almost as if, I would say, actually not almost, at least in this case, Russia's trying to kind of calm things down a little, which is strange but interesting. Estonia, this is good. This is going to really piss off the Russians. Estonia began removing a monument commemorating Soviet soldiers during World War II. Estonia's government said, we will not afford. I love when people use the word afford in English. It's such a great phrase. We will not afford Russia the opportunity to use the past to disturb the peace in Estonia. Estonian Prime Minister Kaja Kallas said in a Tuesday statement, the monument, which is a replica tank, will be replaced by a neutral grave marker. The Russians love to hook everything to World War II because they claim falsely that they're the big saviors of World War II. And it really drives them nuts when the other European countries, Poland has been doing this, and now Estonia kind of stands up and goes, you know what? We don't need to commemorate your troops when it's your troops who keep threatening our existence. So good for them, because it's true. Like, God, what was that? 85 years ago? 85 years ago, you did some good things after doing really bad things. And then right after you did the good things, you enslaved half of Europe. But putting that aside, you did some good things, some good things. So there you go. The Finnish. Oh, this is good too. This is good though. See, it's more and more of I love when the Scandinavian countries and the whole Baltic region kind of get together on this stuff. According to Finnish Foreign Minister Pekka Haavisto, Finland will cut the number of visas issued to Russians to 10% of the current amount starting September 1st, according to Reuters. Haavisto said Russians were using Finland and its Helsinki-Vantaa airport to access other European holiday destinations. And basically, even though some of the other Europeans, like the Germans, won't do anything about it, because Chancellor Kohl even came out and said it wouldn't be fair to the poor Russian people. The Finns are saying, well, they're using our airport to get to you. We're just going to cut them out of our airport. This is now, what is interesting is Latvia is doing this too. We are seeing a lot of chutzpah, a lot of backbone out of the Baltic area, and less so out of the rest of Europe or out of Western Europe, which is stupid. Did I call him Cole? I didn't call him Cole, did I? Schultz? I once got to see Cole. I didn't get to go in the meeting. We were there for a trip with the Senate, and only a few of us got to go in the meeting, and I couldn't go, but I got to watch him walk by. Very large man. I mean, not just large, he was large. But so Cole keeps, whenever I think Soviets and the Cold War, Cole comes back into my head. Schultz is not being the most helpful guy. Zelenskyy did an interview with the Washington Post, and it's a longer interview, but there was a section where he's talking about why it is he did not warn Ukrainians that the war was coming. Thank you, Bonnie. You may recall that leading up to the invasion, Biden kept warning publicly. He kept exposing false flag operations the Russians were going to do. In other words, cute little attacks the Russians were going to do and blame it on everybody else and this kind of garbage, right? And Zelenskyy kept publicly disagreeing with us, and actually kind of in a mean way, actually. I mean, actually. But What was interesting is he's now explaining why he did it. In other words, he's saying, yeah, we knew they were going to invade. He did say that, I know I see nothing. I thought the same thing with that, Gordon. Zelensky's saying that no one thought they were going to invade the way they did, meaning the war crimes and everything else. Even that I think is debatable because these are the Russians, right? So, not surprising in that regard. But well, let me tell you what he said, okay? You can't simply say to me, listen, you should start to prepare people now and tell them they need to put away money, they need to store up food. If we had communicated that, meaning in the months leading up to the war, if we had told them, okay, look, they're going to attack us, you better put money and food away right now, right? If we had communicated that, and that is what some people wanted, who I will not name, he means Joe Biden in that case, then I would have been losing $7 billion with a B dollars a month since last October. And at the moment when the Russians did attack, they would have taken us in 3 days. I'm not saying whose idea it was. Oh God, he really was kind of, he's still pissed about it, clearly. I'm not saying whose idea it was, but generally our inner sense was right. If we sow chaos among people before the invasion, the Russians will devour us because during chaos, people flee the country. He said a little bit, he said a lot more, but this other paragraph I thought was interesting. Oh no, I didn't grab the second paragraph. Okay, I was being good. He said more in there, but basically his concern was that people would have just fled, that people would have fled the country. They would have panicked. The economy would have crashed, right? They would have lost the money. And interesting argument, actually. I don't even know that he went this far, but I think part of it is if Russia invades, then the Ukrainians get pissed off and they fight back and they volunteer, right? And they organize. Whereas if you tell them the Russians are coming, do they fight? You can't fight back. There's no one to fight back against. All you do is worry and you move your family and you maybe even leave the country with your family, right? So the men too. You could have lost the men at that point too. He also went on actually to talk about martial law and how he couldn't have really held the country together without declaring martial law, and he didn't want to declare martial law until there was the invasion. Anyway, it's an interesting interview in the Post, the Washington Post, that is, not the Evil Post. Hang on, I'm going to adjust my temperature. Getting cold again in here. One moment, and then I will continue. Just a quick little data point. This data point almost struck me as wrong. The Kyiv Independent was citing this today. Russia uses up to 60,000 rounds of ammunition daily, as compared to Ukraine using 700 to 800 shells a day. So that would put Ukraine using 100 times fewer shells. Yeah, because 10 times would be 7,000, 100 times would be 70,000. So I thought the number was something on the order of 10 times that the Russians were using, 10 times the artillery of the Ukrainians. This is saying 100 times, which I don't know if that's the case. That's a hell of a difference. This came from the commander-in-chief of Ukraine's armed forces, Valery Zaluzhny, who said that the Russian forces carry out approximately, the Ukrainian forces, 700 to 800 shellings each day. Yeah, it says Russia here. That's not right. It means Ukraine. Yeah, 60,000 rounds of ammunition daily. Yeah, the Ukrainians, it was saying was 700 to 800. That sounded to me like those numbers are correct. Okay, I thought it was 10 to 1 though. Thank you, Mike, for the hat, by the way. I thought it was 10 to 1. Well, mind you, look, we certainly have given somebody, Carol was asking if it was apples and oranges. Clearly, for example, we did just give Ukraine additional, I think we call them Gimlers, but they're the GPS rockets or the GPS missile rockets, I guess, the GPS rockets, for example. And these are the shells that go, or the missiles that go, missiles, rocket, whatever, the rockets that go. And because they're GPS guided, you have a much better chance of, basically they compared them to airplane guided bombs, where the airplane guided bombs are like boom and they get right in there, right? They were comparing it to that these. So it's not the same thing. And actually, interesting point, if you get to it, we do know that Ukraine does not have the artillery compared to Russia, and that they need a lot more. Okay. But it's interesting because if the Russians are having to shoot just a lot of crap left and right to hit the targets. The Ukrainians would need fewer of these, although I'm not sure how many we gave them. I wouldn't be surprised if it's like several hundred. I'd have to look it up, but they're very expensive from what I remember, these GPS rounds that we're giving them. Anyway, just throwing it out there. No, it says shelling. It said shelling. Yeah. So this is artillery. Yeah, not rifle. No. Any case, that's the end of that anyway. So that's it from the news today from Ukraine. That wasn't too long, 6:40. Let's dive into the questions. I did, by the way, put in a request to TikTok to ask them what was up with the Q&A disappearing from my lives. Some people still had them in their lives. Mine disappeared months ago. So who knows? If I get lucky, they'll see it. If I get lucky, they'll do something about it. Hopefully they do, because you guys used to love that before. For now, what we'll do, you all, very simple. You can use the comment box at the bottom. On YouTube, you can also use the super chat questions. For you all, feel free to use the Q&A box. I know some of you had problems with it, and then the other day you said it was finally working, but I will show you in my profile. There is a Q&A. You see it right there. Q&A with the red circle next to it, or the red square, the comment box. Click that, and in my case, it'll show me the questions. In yours, you can even click ask a question, and Lord hopes you'll be able to. Ashley, I have no idea what email. I don't know. Sasha's doing well. She's sleeping as always. It's not working still. You guys are now wait, yesterday, try it again right now, guys, on TikTok. Sorry, the rest of you. The TikTok thing gets to be difficult sometimes. YouTube streams way better because it's not TikTok. I mean, I'm saying like it's just a different system. TikTok's been having some issues. YouTube is not. I mean, TikTok, for example, has been having some buffering issues, which I did, by the way, send that to TikTok as well, just so they know. And, you know, if I'm lucky, oops, let me get rid of that banner. If I'm lucky, they'll be able to fix it. Let me see here. Tips. Now, there's a good question, too. Let me first look at the question. So I'm going to go back, look at Q&A. Q&A works for me from Dawn Majo. So it's working for somebody. Well, so I'm getting a lot of you. Bobby Matty. Test question from Manda Bear, although some of these might have been from yesterday. Okay, well, now I'm getting testing from all of you all. So it's working today. Okay? So why don't you ask me some real questions rather than giving me test questions, because now I've got all of your test questions. So some of you are getting an error, though. Okay. A number of you can't post. And what's the error it's giving you? Just so I know. You try to post and what actually happens. Hi, Harvey. Sorry to make you guys wait, but it is good to sort of figure out what the TikTok problems are. What's the error message it gives you? Question not available? Interesting. And that's when you try to post your question, it says question not available. Okay. But not everybody, which is crazy. Don't have Q&A or tips. Jesus Christ. God. No Q&A or tips. Oh, God. It's so crazy. Anyway. All right. I'm going to put it there. Are you worried about Germany being on Russia's side? I don't want to say Russia's side. I'm worried about Germany being on Germany's side, right? I'm worried about Germany being worrying about its own businesses and not worrying about actually helping. Forget helping Ukraine. I mean, countries have to get involved in foreign policy. Thank you, Inspired, for that. Countries have to get involved. Let me refer. I want to use correct grammar here. Countries have to make decisions in foreign policy based on their own unique national interest. And if it's not in their national interest to get involved, they won't get involved, and they shouldn't get involved. It is possible you can have a policy that is simply based on human rights, and Jimmy Carter tried it, didn't work too well, but you can have that where sometimes you say, yes, it is so horrific what's happening, we have got to get involved and help. It doesn't matter if there's no benefit to our country. Frankly, if there's no benefit to the world. I mean, you know, I would disagree with that, because I think genocide, for example, even if it's in the middle of nowhere and it doesn't matter to the rest of us, genocide is still horrific. It's not just obviously it's morally wrong, but there's something on a global scale about it that I would think. Any case, what I'm saying is I'm having a hard time giving a national security interest as to why the United States or any country should care about genocide. I do think morally we should, just because we are human beings, and there's certain things. But but here's the thing with national interest, though. Generally speaking, Ukraine, I believe it is in America's national interest, and it's in Europe's national interest, and it's in the national interest of free nations everywhere to care about what Russia's doing, because Russia is now a threat. Putting aside for a fact that genocide morally should upset us and it should be abhorrent and we should do something about it, Russia is a threat to us and they need to be stopped. They are not just a bad country doing bad things in the middle of nowhere and nobody cares. So this isn't just a moral position, right? I don't think Germany sees it that way. I don't think Chancellor Scholz sees it that way. I think he only sees it as being, this is Germany's interest is being friends with Russia, and Germany's interest is helping our own business. And they don't, they're members of NATO, but I think also they may not, it may come down, and again, the German scholars, you Germans or German scholars are going to know this better than I do, but maybe the Germans just don't, people like Scholz simply don't see Russia as being that big a threat. That could be it too. That he just feels like, no, it's just not that big of a threat going on. I don't know. Anyway, let me look at the questions to see if you guys submitted any questions. You guys as well, obviously. Oh, here we go. Medic. The word I'm getting from my colleagues who have returned from the front and zero line. What is needed is water purification, food, and medicine for bronchitis. Okay. Let me, what are the chances of Russia attacking Lithuania to create a corridor to Kaliningrad? Let me pull up my map again. I don't think I have I do, but they're probably in my favorites hidden. I'll pull up another one. I have never been that worried about Russia attacking Lithuania, but having said that, the experts I talked to, they were, before the war, they were worried. They were actually worried. Hang on a sec. These are, some European experts and some American experts. Hang on. I'll show you guys. So Kaliningrad, I always like to remind people because it's always kind of a shock. I shall put the red dot on. There we go. The red dot. Kaliningrad is a piece of Russia in the middle of Europe. There you go. That little dot, you can see the border around it, is Russia. It is surrounded by Lithuania to the north, Poland to the south, but it's actually a piece of Russia. They stole it during World War II or after World War II. There you guys go. So you see Kaliningrad, you see Poland to the south, you see Lithuania to the north and to the east. It is on the Baltic Sea, across from Gotland and the Swedes, but it is a part of Russia that is in Europe. I don't consider the rest of Russia being really European, so that's why I say in Europe. The concern is, open this up again, that the Russians do not like that their little land is sandwiched in Europe, and they would like to get a land corridor to make themselves feel better. Now, so they basically can have a continuous line. Now, Russia isn't close enough, but you know what is close enough? Belarus, right? And we've talked about Belarus before. Belarus is that country that's north of Ukraine up here, northwest of Ukraine, that is a Russian puppet state run by a dictator called Lukashenko. Let me show you this, okay? So again, Kaliningrad is going to be the red dot with the border around it, Poland to the south, Lithuania bordering it to the north, and you're going to see the border there between Lithuania and Poland, right? So to Kaliningrad's east, you see that line. Well, that line connects you to Belarus. The concern, I'll show you guys in a second, the concern is the Russians go through Belarus. You can see the Belarusian town of, Grodno, like Grodno or something like that. The Russians come through Grodno, they go there, and the Russians invade, and they grab a little bit of Poland, a little bit of Lithuania, and they create a corridor from Belarus to Kaliningrad and steal the land and make it Russia. Show you guys. So you can see Kaliningrad there. You see Lithuania, Poland. So you can see Poland is the area to the south with the town, what is it, Białystok or something like that, Białystok. That's Poland. And then you've got Grodno to the east. That's Belarus. So that border there, that border right there, the concern is, you can see my ugly nail, the concern is that the Russians would invade from Belarus, grab that border area between Lithuania and Poland, and create a land corridor to Kaliningrad. Now, what does that do? Well, initially, it cuts off the Baltic states from the rest of NATO, because normally they'd be connected by land through Poland. That's a big concern. Now, I, of course, think, look, Lithuania is a NATO member. Correct, Richie. Lithuania is a member of NATO. Poland's a member of NATO. That would be immediate war with NATO. Why isn't that enough to convince the Russians not to do it? Now, I talked to a former NATO defense minister before the war who told me, and maybe a couple of weeks before the war, and he told me, he said, look, just because NATO is attacked doesn't mean Article 5 is that we're all going to war. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, a NATO member can be attacked. They can invoke Article 5. We can all get together. Then NATO has to get together. All of the countries have to, vote and agree that this is an Article 5 infraction or whatever, that it is an attack on all of us and that we'll go to war. If we don't agree, we don't go to war. I mean, so it is not and he said, it's not a guarantee. I mean, he was saying he was absolutely convinced it was not a guarantee that NATO would necessarily go to war if the Russians invaded. He was also concerned about NATO's ability to fight a land war, because after the Soviet Union dissolved and disappeared in 1991, Eastern Europe was liberated in 89, most of it, and then the Soviet Union dissolved in 1991. NATO was focusing on other issues, right? We had 9/11 in 2001. So in other words, we were starting to focus on terrorism, on the Middle East, and sort of other areas. We weren't worried about a land war with Russia anymore. That land war was going to come across Eastern Europe. It was going to come across East Germany into West Germany. That isn't the concern anymore. Well, now we're concerned about a land war again, but guess what? We don't have the tanks that we had during the Soviet era. We had a lot of tanks in Europe. We don't have them anymore. We being NATO. So that's a very long way of saying I was pretty confident that the Russians wouldn't attack Lithuania or Poland because they'd be at war with all of us. Some of the actual former defense minister, for example, wasn't so sure about that. So that's a little scary. Let me pull up another. Harvey Kittle, she's in the Discord. If Turkey says no to, well, that's what I'm wondering about in net. And that is asking, if Turkey says no to Article 5, what happens? Now, this is an interesting question. I don't know how this works. Actually, it's kind of a simple question, but for Article 5, well, I believe any country invokes Article 5, but the question then becomes, for NATO to actually go to war, I'm going to guess NATO has to unanimously agree. That's going to be my guess. I'm going to guess it's not a majority of countries. Does anybody know? I mean, we can Google it and see, but I'm suspecting it's unanimity. Harvey, you should be up on this. You're my young savant on foreign policy. Or are you just a media savant on all the latest news? All right, if you guys don't, I may just Google this. Well, let's pull it up. Let's pull it up and do a quick look here. Hold on. How does NATO agree to go to war? Let's see. Yeah. If it determined that the attack was directed from abroad against the U.S., it would be regarded as an action. We know that. How does NATO decide to intervene? Three particular factors. We know that. Let me see. No vote, because that just means that there is no voting at NATO. What? We know they're all attacked, but how does it actually work? I'm not getting a straight answer here, guys. You want to be a savant? Well, Harvey is unique here. Okay, none of you experts are here. Lee Irene says, in Finland, we were told Article 5 also means that members participate in different ways, not immediately meaning sending troops to another country. Each member will decide Article 5, as Eric in Paris is saying. Oh, that's interesting. That's scary. They're not required to send military. Interesting. But does that mean, I don't know. I'm getting some different answers from you guys here. Let's look up how NATO, I'm sure, knows, but I'm not sure it's funny that none of us do. How is Article 5 invoked? I've got a friend who would know this because he was a head of intelligence of U.S. intelligence for NATO, or at NATO. Allies can provide any forms they deem necessary. With the invocation of, this is from NATO's website, listen to this. With the invocation of Article 5, allies can provide any form of assistance they deem necessary to respond to a situation. This is an individual obligation on each ally, and each ally is responsible for determining what it deems necessary in the particular circumstances. Yikes. That sounds kind of, you're right, Eric, that sounds kind of wimpy, right? Yee. Yeah, sounds a little wimpy. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay. So that's also what our former defense, not our, but meaning the one I was talking to, former defense minister was talking about, the European defense minister. Let me look here. Yep. Okay. All right. We know it's been invoked in 2001. Since Ukraine, we know that. What constitutes an attack? It specifies an armed attack, but what is an armed attack? This is from CNN, but they're doing a pretty good job here. Right, there's discussion on whether a cyber attack is an attack, whether an attack on the nuclear plant. That's a question for the alliance to make, says John Kirby, who was Pentagon spokesman until recently. Specifically, I would just remind that Article 5 makes it clear that it's an armed attack on a NATO ally that triggers Article 5. But how that's interpreted, that would really be something for the NATO alliance to determine. Okay, so we don't have a straight answer here, guys, but that's interesting. Very interesting. All right, close this. Boom. All right. Well, I think it's left intentionally vague in part so that the countries that join NATO are a little more comfortable. Kirby got moved over to the NSC. I believe he's a spokesman for the National Security Council. Sometimes, Cal. Not always. But I think Kirby got moved. He did get moved to the White House, but I think it's National Security Council he got moved to. He's very good. Very good, smart guy. He's an admiral, which kind of blew my mind because he was a spokesman before at the Pentagon, then was spokesman again, but he's an admiral. Like, I wouldn't think an admiral would become a spokesman, but then again, very good at it. Let's see what else we got here, guys. Now, remember, I'm not going to go too late today because my voice is still vaguely better today. I'm being very careful, so we're going to end up shortly here. Well, the Baltic countries, the Nordic would always protect the Baltic countries. Yes. And look, the U.S. will come to the defense of NATO allies unless Donald Trump is president or somebody similar. And that's where we are now. That was never the case. There was never a question, I think, as to, I will do the recap in a sec. There was never a question as to the U.S. coming to the defense of our allies. Now, I would not, if I were advising a foreign government, I would tell you, do not count on America being an ally in anything. Do not count on us agreeing to our treaties. Do not count on us agreeing to our trade agreements, which are also treaties. Don't count on anything, because a Democratic administration will support you. A Republican one, it depends which. Trump, Trump might, but it's totally based on his whim, and it's going to be totally based on personal gain with Trump. He's not doing it unless it helps him. He's just not. And even if somebody were a Trump fan and say, well, that's not true. You do agree it's true, though, that with Trump, it's not a guarantee. With a Democratic president, it's a guarantee. And with a lot of other Republican presidents, it was a guarantee. And it would have been. Mitt Romney, it would have been a guarantee. Donald Trump, it's not a guarantee. And as I said, Trump, you can't even trust his agreements on economic agreements or anything else. It's really too bad, because it was truly not the beginning of the end, but it pushed America's decline even more so, I think, in terms of our role in the world, because you can't come back from that, right? There's no way we can come back from what Trump did. You can never trust us ever again, because we voted for Trump. Half the country voted for him the first time, ish. Not half, but he got a decent amount of the vote the second time, right? I forget, was it 63 million for Trump or something and 71 million for Biden, something like that. But that's a lot of voters from the American. That's a lot of voters. 47%, 48%. That should not have happened. That means that the American people could vote for him again. And then all bets are off. So it's really sad, but you can't trust us. That's ridiculous as far as I'm concerned. All right, let me do the summary here and then we're done. And then we're going to go over to Discord and we're going to hang. Huge ammunition depot explosion in northern Crimea, caused by the Ukrainians, of course. More explosions additionally at a military base further south in Crimea. Again, in that one, they're thinking is an unmanned drone. The first one, the Ukrainians suggested it was a Ukrainian special operations team. Why Crimea matters. Putin considers it the sacred place and sounds sexual, doesn't it? Crimea is his sacred place. It is a sacred place and a holy land, and that the Ukrainians are therefore going after it, not just to free it, which is a fair point. They want to free it, but also it really causes trouble for Putin by the Ukrainians going after Ukraine, because it's almost an attack on his manhood, because he's tied so much of his presidency to it. No single action. I've got that already. Russia, according to UK Defense Intelligence, Russia is struggling to exert control over the Black Sea. The Institute for the Study of War, a think tank here in DC, says that elements of Luhansk's People's Militia, is Eastern Ukraine, are refusing to fight for the Russians now that the Russians have pretty much, established their independence, so to speak, in Eastern Ukraine. They're refusing to fight for the Russians elsewhere, which is pretty hilarious. The additional Ukrainian attacks in Kherson, they went after ammunition depots. A railway was blown up in Russia right across the border, in northeastern Ukraine, right across the border. Not saying it's Ukrainians. Someone planted TNT to blow up a railway. Someone, you guess who? Ukrainian sources say that partisans blew up a rail bridge in Melitopol, a town in southern Ukraine occupied by the Russians. And there were 2 other explosions in the same town, taking out a pro-Kremlin broadcaster. The Ukrainian Air Force is warning that the Russians will probably have pretty large attacks coming up on August 24th, which is Ukraine's Independence Day. The Russian defense minister surprised me by saying that there is no need to use nuclear weapons in Ukraine. Estonia began removing a monument commemorating Soviet soldiers during World War II, sure to piss off the Russians. Finland is now limiting visas to Russians, which is going to hurt Russian tourism to the rest of Europe because they love going through Finland. Zelenskyy talked about, to the Washington Post interview, about why it is that he did not warn his people in the days before the war that the war was truly coming. And he says that had he told Ukrainians that the war was coming, they would have panicked. They would have fled the country. The money would have been gone. They would have been gone. It would have been just a big problem across the board. And that's why. I see your question or your research, Joseph. I'll get you in a sec. Thank you for looking that up. And then we talked about just that Russia is using up to 60,000 rounds of ammunition daily, which sure sounds like artillery. That was people were saying but by saying rounds, I think that's artillery. And the Ukrainians are using anywhere from 1/10 to 1/100 that. So there you go. Let me look. Joseph did a little research on the NATO issue. Oops, where'd this go, Joseph? Hang on. There it is. Wait, is that were there two parts? Yeah, collective defense means that an attack against one ally is considered an attack against all allies, in your opinion, equals if NATO didn't act, it undermines the very reason for an alliance, so I don't agree. I mean, I agree with you. The problem becomes is Hungary gonna help? Is Turkey gonna help? I mean, depending what's going on. That's my concern. That's my concern. And frankly, with Trump doesn't give a damn about undermining the alliance. Trump would love to undermine the alliance. I mean, that's my concern is logically, why would Trump care about anything you just said? Right? Man, anyway, that's my concern. I'm not saying you're wrong, but that's my concern about it. All right, guys, let me, you know what? Last little thing I'll show you. I put up one more t-shirt and then I got a question for you. Actually, I put up one more t-shirt on the website. There we go. I grabbed the picture. Well, I'll show you the other one. So, okay. So this is the one of Sasha it's now up and live. I showed you this yesterday, but I really like it. So there you go. Sasha wearing the Ukrainian gear. This is the civil defense patch from the civil defense forces, which I really like this one. This one I'm going to buy because it's got the Ukrainian trident in the middle and the colors are great. And it's blue and red. What I'm showing you is a picture of it. It's not as good. And this one I got. This is the insignia of the National Police Force. I had Vlad buy a number of them, so I finally got a good scan. This one I'm definitely getting because it says Policia. Well, I say Policia, maybe Policia, depending how you say it, or Policia. In it, and I think that's fabulous. And it's got the trident in the middle too. This one I love. This one I'm going to be buying because I like stuff that has foreign writing on it. So it's saying Policia in Ukrainian. It's fabulous. And that's the National Police Forces. So anyway, you can check out the store. Aravosis.com is the store. Discord.aravosis.com is the Discord. I am going to hang up now to preserve my voice. We'll go to the Discord and I will just hang out a little bit. We do audio over there for now. And I will hang out. We'll do a couple more minutes of audio, but nothing too long because I want to be careful with my voice. So let's just go to the Discord for a couple minutes. It's aravosis.discord.com. And if you're going for the first time, make sure you've got the app installed because the app works much better than going with the websites. All right, guys. All right, I'm going to sign off. Thank you all. And see you tomorrow. Otherwise, either join us at the Discord or tomorrow at 6 p.m. Okay? 6 p.m. New York City time, Eastern time. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you, Joseph, again for that. Appreciate it. Boom. Boom. And you guys.